That's weird. I've not held the autofocus back button in there and it shoots lots faster. But when I hold it in, what's all that about? That's bizarre. So finally, the time has come to get out of the Pentax K3 for the first time after receiving the camera almost a week ago. And before we get into the video, this is by no means a review of the Pentax K3 Mark III. That video will come further down the line when I've had more time with the camera and more experience using it. Today, this is my first impressions, my initial impressions of the camera, using it as it comes straight out of the box. And where better to do that than at the motocross track? So let's go. So if you're new to the channel, you might be surprised to know that I've been shooting fast action with Pentax for around 5 years now. First with the K70 and then next with the original K3. So by coming back here to the Enduro today now, not the motocross track, it gives me a real world scenario, a really good real world scenario in which to test and compare not only the K3 Mark III to its predecessors, but also to the other cameras that I use for this type of stuff. Not only that, but also to the firmware updates that I'll be performing on the K3 Mark III as I go along and get more used to this camera. But in terms of today, all I want to do is give my first initial impressions on the camera and how it performs in a real world scenario straight out of the box and relay those thoughts to you guys. Okay, so one of the first things that I want to test out today on the Pentax K3 Mark III is the new optical viewfinder, because as we know, there was a lot of fuss made over this in the marketing campaign of how improved this was. It was nice and bright, much larger. Myself, I've only ever shot AF.C cameras, so this is going to be quite telling for me because I've got nothing to compare it to in terms of like a full frame viewfinder. But from what I've heard and what I've read, this is quite comparable to that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm up here on this hill, as you can see here. The riders are struggling to get up here today. It's quite harsh conditions, but I'm going to be zooming in as they come up through this little ravine, this river thing over here. And as they come closer to me, I'm going to widen the focal range on the 55 to 300. We're going back towards the 55 range. And I just want to see how the viewfinder covers this area. I think it's a good test for that. So what I'll do is I'm going to plonk yous down over here and we'll have a quick run through with this. And I'll probably do some overview at the end of the video to clarify my thoughts, because we're in the heat of the action right now and I don't want to miss stuff. So, and I will say now that before I came out yesterday, I had a little play around in the garden with the camera, just to get sort of like the settings how I wanted them to be when I rocked up at the track. So I have saved a sports setting almost in the user profile 1, based on what I was doing with the original K3. How much of a difference that will make today and how much I'll have to change it, I do not know yet. So, you know, just to be transparent, I have looked through this viewfinder before in the back garden, but not on site. And it is magnificent. We're in an overcast day today. We've got a lot of cloud cover, and you know, the light's intermittent. It's coming in and out, but this is it's just like looking without a camera in front of your face, without a viewfinder. It's like looking with your eyes almost, if that makes sense. It is noticeably larger than my K3 Mark I, the K5 and the 7D Mark II that I have. Yes, that is really nice. So that's that checked off the list. Lovely and bright viewfinder. And as I say, I'll be doing a little bit of a sort of roundup at the end of this video as to my thoughts on the things that I covered today. But we're going off to the next spot because time's a ticking and we need to get these shots today. So we'll see you at the next spot. So next up on the list, I want to check out the frames per second on this camera in the burst mode, because again, that was something that was talked about a lot in the marketing for this camera when it first came out. I'm used to the K3 and the K70 beforehand. The K70, I believe, was 6 frames per second maximum in burst, and the K3 is 8. If you've seen any of my shooting style before, I tend not to use that sort of spray and pray shooting style. I like to obviously still use AF.C, continuous autofocus, but I like to be in single drive mode for the shot, because as you can imagine, on an event day to day like this, you're going to get a lot of shots, and a lot of the same shots with not much difference if you're spraying and praying. But for the purposes of finding out what 12 frames per second sounds like, I'll be doing that now, and I'm going to test it in RAW and JPEG, and I'll list it on the screen which is which. As far as I'm aware, there is a difference. You might get more in JPEG than what you do in RAW, but again, that's something else we're going to have to look at in further firmware updates when I update the camera as I go along. I purposely have left the camera as it comes out of box. I haven't upgraded the firmware, just in case you didn't know that. So we're going to do a bit of machine gun style. Find the spot down here and we're going to let it go wild. Okay, so I've got the camera set up in shooting RAW, and the burst mode, the drive mode, is into high continuous shooting H on the camera. So we're just going to wait for some riders to come along here, and we're going to hold the shutter button down and see what it sounds like. So, just in case you didn't hear that, I don't like ever doing this. I don't like seeing this on camera, but I'm just going to do it in front of the camera. We'll let these bikes get out of the way and then put the mic up to this and just see if you can hear it. That's weird. I've not held the autofocus back button in there and it shoots lots faster. But when I hold it in, what's all that about? That's bizarre. I'll have to research that when we get back home. So remember guys, if you like this video so far, leave it a like, a thumbs up, and also comment down below what sort of things you want me to test out on this camera going forward. If I haven't already covered them today, I'll probably be going over these type of things again. This is obviously with the firmware straight out of the box, as I said, but yeah, do that. Leave a comment down below on the type of things that you would like me to test on the K3 Mark III. Much appreciated. So another thing that I'm really excited to test out on this K3 Mark III, which is a first for Pentax, is the joystick on the camera, because it's the first model that they've had that's got a joystick on the back of it. And since owning the 7D Mark II, I found it something really useful. It's a really nice feature to have for moving subjects, for fast moving subjects, where you can just dance around the screen with your focus points. And I'll just place the GoPro on this pole here and I'll show you in front. The GoPro was not the best camera to bring out today, but I didn't know if it was going to rain. So as you can see, this here is what I'm talking about, this joystick. And you know, already today, from using it so far, I'm finding it much better than the original K3, I must say. It's just so nice to be able to move the focus point around the screen without having to use the buttons on the back of the camera. And it helps out so much when you're trying to compose an image. You can just put the focus point exactly where you want it, and you can also, obviously, you click the button in and it brings it back to dead center, which is a nice feature. So that is a massive plus, and it's something that I'm going to be using all the time going forward with the K3 Mark III. So next up, what I want to do is test out how well the autofocus continuous tracks riders coming towards you. So as you can see, coming down here, we've got riders coming along this long stretch, And I'm going to use the camera in AF.C to see how well it deals with tracking the subjects moving directly towards you. That was always the problem with Pentax cameras, or so was said. Firmware, straight out the box firmware, I think it's 1.5. We'll see how this improves as I update the firmware. Just a look at how they're coming along here. I think we'll get some nice shots in this bit of mud as well. So yeah, that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so the next thing I want to test out is the new panning feature that's included on this camera, which I'm actually extremely happy about because, again, if you've never seen my channel, you might not know that I actually love panning, and they've actually included a shake reduction button on the body. So you've got the standard shake reduction, but now you've also got the panning option, which is obviously for that type of motion blur effect. So we're going to see how that works now. We're on the same straightaway as the riders were coming along before, when I was trying to get them coming head on to see if the autofocus continuous could grab the riders heading directly towards you. And now I'm going to put the camera into the correct panning option for panning on the shake reduction, and we're going to lower the shutter speed, up our f-stop to get an exposure. We'll try 1/80th, f16 we're looking at. And I know what you're thinking, the GoPro, you guys watching are in the way, but we're going to clone you out in post, so that's okay. So the first shot, not so good, blurry. Second shot, it's okay. Third shot, again, slightly blurry. So that was in single drive mode. What I'll do now is I'm going to put it in medium drive mode for the burst, the shutter speed. No, sorry, the drive, the actuations of the camera. As you can tell, guys, when you're trying to do all this stuff at once, it gets on top of you a little bit. Because after I shut yous down, I'm going to have to concentrate on getting some really good photos for the riders. Not that any of these will be bad, I'm sure. They should be okay. Fingers crossed. The first couple of shots are slightly blurry, but when it works, I mean, it's extremely sharp. That's lovely. And we've got a host of riders coming up now, so this will be a good way to test this. I'm not sure how much difference there is between the old panning and the new one. It's something I'm going to test out in future, but yeah, that's that little bit of a test concluded. We'll move on to a new spot. So that's the day over with. We've been around the track, around the enduro track for about 5 hours now, and it's humid, it's hot. I need to go home, have a beverage and assess the camera really. But what I'll do now is I'll just talk about what I thought was good, what I expected to be good, and there were some things that caught me off guard a little bit about the camera. Now again, I'm going to reiterate it, this camera is as it is straight out of box, so the firmware has not been updated. So keep that in mind with some of the things that I've been talking about today and that I might mention now and going forward, because there's been a lot of firmware updates for the K3 Mark III, which I will be doing, and I'm sure that the camera will improve going forward. But, you know, just to start off with, what I'll do is I'll go over the notes that I had for the K3 Mark III. I've put my phone down somewhere. I can't, oh yes, here it is. So the things that I went through today. The viewfinder on this camera, I think I said, there's not much more I can say on that. As I said earlier on in the video, it's absolutely beautiful. It lets so much light in. The field of view is outstanding. Like I say, I've never personally shot full frame yet, so it's like I'm comparing it directly to the AF.C cameras that I shoot normally, and it is definitely much brighter and much bigger than what they are. And I can see what people mean again about it being very similar to a full frame viewfinder. Then we talked about the frames per second. Now, I did know when I did that, I did say that I was going to test that in RAW and in JPEG. Obviously, I didn't test it in JPEG, but when I get home, I'm going to just fire some shots off in JPEG and in RAW, and we can see the difference if there is any. It's as I thought, you know, it says what it's on the tin. It's fast, and it's not something that I use all the time, but it's just awesome to have that functionality. Next up, we had the new joystick. Now, this for me is a game changer for Pentax, because as I say, I've been using the Canon 7D to shoot this type of stuff quite often, and that has a joystick, and it's beautiful to use, as is this. This is immense. So going forward, I think this camera for this type of stuff, any fast moving action, or even not fast moving action, just where you need to move your autofocus point around the frame, it's, you know, it's brilliant. And once you've used it, you won't want to go back. It'll be hard to go back, I know that much. Then we had the autofocus continuous for riders and subjects coming directly towards the camera. Now, this was something that Pentax struggled with in the past. This camera, instantly, it locks on and it stays locked on. And I know that this has been improved from what I've read in the future firmware updates, so I'm really excited to see it get even better than what it already is. But it's levels above the original K3 or the K70 or the K5, you know, all the other Pentax cameras that I've used personally. Next up, we had the AF.C panning shake reduction function that I tested. Now, I just assumed that that's what it is. I'm going to have to read up on the manual, because as you know, as most of you might be the same as me, you don't tend to look at the manual. You want to just get out with the camera and go for it, basically. But I had mixed results with that. I wasn't too impressed, to be honest, but we'll see if that improves with future firmware updates. I got some shots what were nicely sharp in the background. There was some motion streaks, but others, it was just blurry, where I've done better with the original K3. Maybe it's because I'm used to that camera a bit more, but who knows. And that's it. That was it for today. I'd like to know your thoughts on this, and as I said earlier on, comment down below what else you would like me to test on this camera. Up next, I'll leave a video about this lens, actually, the 55 to 300 PLM lens, because I think that this lens pairs perfectly with this camera, and the PLM motor, you know, coupled with the new autofocus system that lives inside this camera, is a massive step up for Pentax. So I'll leave that video up here or up here. Click on that and I'll see you over there. I'm out for now.